Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. Today we're going to talk about the GameForce ACE, and this was going to be a review, okay? I was going to review this, and I got it in, and it's just been an absolute disaster, a mess. Every time I try and do something with this handheld, it just doesn't want to do it. It keeps breaking. So instead of an actual review, this video is just going to be talking about what is wrong with this thing, what you should do, and the idea is just don't buy it yet. Maybe wait a little bit. And I don't want to come off as rude at all because a lot of work goes into these handhelds, of course. But this should not have been released. This should not be out for pre-order. This should not be out for order. This should not have been sent out. This is not ready yet. Let's talk about it. Now, for those that don't know who GameForce is, they're a smaller company. There's, I think, probably 1 to 3 people that are there. They made the GameForce Chi, which is a cute-looking handheld, and they're really just a small outfit. They're not a big Ambernic or Powkitty or anything like that. And for those that are familiar with the KTR1, it's a very similar situation here. They made the handheld, they kind of made it to their specs, and it's kind of meant to just be an enthusiast device. It's not going to be a mass market device at all. The biggest reason for this handheld and why a lot of people were excited for it was because there's an RK3588S in here, which would be the most powerful Linux handheld, besides the Steam Deck, of course, once we get some Linux firmware on here. And I know that Jellos is working on it. I think some other custom firmwares are coming too. And so we might get there at some point for firmware on the Linux end, but I can tell you that right out of the box, this is running Android 13 and it is an absolute just buggy mess right now. And actually, just on the software side of things, this doesn't come with the Google Play Store. You have to sideload the Aurora Store. You can't sideload the Play Store right now. I think that's in the works, but when you first get it, you can't do it. Spec-wise, this was actually packing quite a bit of specs in its normal pre-order price point. There's 8 gigs of RAM, there's 256 gigabytes of storage, at least in this model. There's a 5.5-inch 1080p display, Hall sticks, micro HDMI, and this model here has a 7400 milliamp hour battery. I think on the website it still says 5,000 or 5,500 milliamp hours, and I'm not sure if I got an upgrade or what happened there. One concern spec-wise that I do have is that this has Wi-Fi 5 in it. So it's an older Wi-Fi chip that's inside of here, and I feel like that might be an issue with actual game streaming, which I would love to confirm for you if I could. It was up for pre-order for $159 US. There was a coupon at launch. I got mine for $167 US shipped. At pre-order, that's it. You can't buy it at that price anymore. Right now, it's the lowest at $229 US plus everything else. So it's gone up quite a bit, quite significantly. And I have to say that even if everything was working properly in this device, I don't think it would be a good price point to purchase at. $229 US for this, I don't think makes sense. But at $160, $170 US, I think, yeah, it does. Again, if everything worked out properly and it was actually doing what it should be doing. Theoretically, the RK3588S should play a decent amount of GameCube and PS2. And I'm saying theoretically because even I can't confirm it and I have it right here in my hands, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Taking a look at the actual handheld, and it's a Switch Lite looking handheld. You could put them next to each other, they look exactly the same. I'm pretty sure the actual dimensions of them are probably the same as well, although I don't have a Switch Lite to compare it with. Now, looking at the controls, and I would actually be happy with these controls if they worked properly. The analog sticks are Hall sticks, so that's a great thing. The problem is I somehow developed drift already, and I don't know how this happened, but you can see how awesome it is that Sly is moving on his own in this game. We're here. We've got AI gaming already. I don't even have to play the game anymore. It just plays itself. But it goes even further than that. The dead zones on the sticks are awful. I don't know how else to put it. It's just not good. There's no consistency on either of the sticks, and neither of the sticks are doing good at all on the dead zone part. Now, the D-pad is probably one of the only things that is fine. It's loose and it feels great. It's actually really comfortable, and I'm a big fan of that. And I had an easy time doing the spinning kicks in Street Fighter, which somebody's going to yell at me in the comments about what it's called, but the back left kick is perfect, and you spin and you're good. When I'm trying to do Hadoukens, it doesn't really seem to be as consistent. Otherwise, if I'm playing Pokemon, I can go in each direction that I'm pushing down on, and it's not going false diagonal. So if I have to look at the D-pad, it's basically in between. It's not a perfect D-pad for consistency, but it's not the worst D-pad either, and I find it to be actually really comfortable and smooth. Face button wise, they feel pretty good. They're easy to push down, so they're one of the ones that are very light. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on the buttons to push them down, and there's no real resistance there. For me, I like that. They're nice feeling buttons. I don't have an issue with them. But the real buttons that outshine everything else are all the other buttons, the menu buttons, the start and select buttons, and all of that. They are raised very significantly. And I find that's a lot better when you want to push them down. And it's the same idea. They're very light to push down and all that. But I much prefer this over other handhelds that make it so difficult to push down on menu buttons and things like that. This is really nice. It feels good. Then we get to some of the caveats, and the shoulders and triggers are where it starts. L1 and R1 are the loudest of, I think, most buttons I've ever heard. And I'm going to do it right now so you can hear what it sounds like. It's very weird because compared to everything else on this device that is silent and you don't really hear it, you have these massive, loud L1 and R1 buttons that just are also hard to push down. Like, you have to put some effort into pushing these buttons down compared to everything else on this device. It is extremely weird. Then we get to the triggers. This is probably quality control or something, but both of my triggers are different. My L2 trigger is very easy to push down. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and it feels like it's halfway to being broken, but probably isn't. My R2 trigger has extreme resistance. It actually feels like a PS5 controller in that way, where it feels like you're going to get some haptic feedback in some way, but no, it's just for some reason either overtuned or something. There's a spring here that's a lot more tension than the L2 is. And this even continues into software. So if I go and look at the L2 and R2 in a gamepad tester, you can see that on the L2, the moment where it actually activates is a lot further than the R2 is. So even these are just completely messed up. So something software or either hardware related needs to be done to fix these triggers, because both of them are different. Both of them have different spots for the trigger points, and it just does not feel good at all. Taking a look at the rest of the device, and we have the power button that's all on top. We have the volume buttons on top as well, but they're swapped. So where the plus sign would normally be on the right, because I think that makes more sense, it's actually on the left. And that's been driving me bonkers when I go and raise the volume and I'm lowering the volume. On the bottom, we have speaker holes where the speakers just sound off. And we'll have a quick listen now. Just in case it isn't coming through, the speakers are out of phase. And that means that the speakers are just not coordinating with each other to produce a proper sound. They're basically fighting each other. And it just sounds awkward and it sounds off and it's not correct. That can only be fixed through hardware. You have to go in and actually either swap the wires, or I think there's a temporary software fix you can do, but it still won't be as good as if you did it hardware-wise. There's a headphone jack, and I'm happy to report that it works, and I don't hear static or anything like that. It sounds normal. Lastly, we have the dreaded SD card slot. And this is the first handheld in all of the handhelds that I've owned where it's just been an absolute chore to insert and remove this SD card. You can't do it with your fingers unless you have fingers with nails the size of an SD card to be able to push in there. The actual holding point for the SD card is so far in that you need an SD card to either push in or push out. You can't get around it. There's no way. There is impossible for you to put this SD card in with just your fingers. It is a very weird decision. I don't know why this was made, but it's very difficult. But it goes even further than that. Something else is up with the SD card slot on here. I can normally take my Odin 2 SD card and I swap it between all of my Android devices perfectly. You put it in, you can see it, and you play your games. Everything's fine. Haven't had an issue with any of my handhelds like that. The GameForce ACE instantly was like, your SD card is corrupt and it's a problem and we can't see it. So something else is going on with that as well. It actually delayed this review by an entire day, or not a review, because I had to load games up manually and it just took forever. On the back of the device is the intake with the fan, and since we're here, we can talk about the actual fan. There is no fan control that I could find in the settings, so what you get is what the system wants. The problem is what the system wants isn't good for your hands. It is very warm. Right now it's been off. Since I've been recording, it's been 15 minutes, plus I haven't touched it for maybe 20 minutes before then. It is still hot and warm to the touch. It's off. Nothing's on. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's up with the fan, but it's very weird. The fan is noisy. It's got I want to say it's a hum, but it's not a hum. It's very much a just annoying pitch to it. And I'll leave a clip in it so you can hear what it sounds like, but it just does not sound good when it's at what I assume is full speed. You don't hear the air being blown out, you hear the fan, and you don't want to hear that. Then we get to the display, and I have a few concerns here as well on the display part. The brightness of it just doesn't get very dim at all, especially in comparison to other devices, and I'll just use the Odin 2 here because I have it. When you look at them both on the lowest setting, you can see it's a significant difference on brightness. When you look at on the highest setting, there's a significant difference there as well. For some reason, this device just does not want to get dim, and this will all depend on if we can do it software-wise, or if it's a hardware limitation. I guess we'll have to see, but just be prepared that this might not be the best nighttime device for you. Color-wise though, it's not as saturated as the Odin 2 is, as you can see on screen. It's a little bit more muted. I actually don't mind either of them. I think both of them look good. So I'm not going to say that they're bad colors or anything like that. It's just different. So be aware of that. And then on the topic of the screen, this is where all of the issues start and end. So going to testufo.com here and testing the screen's hertz and FPS, mine is currently capped at 53 hertz and 53 FPS. And that's actually very, very bad. The perfect answer to both of these numbers should have been 60 and 60. That's where you want it to be. Even if it was a 61, it still would be better than what we're at right now. Because the problem is when it's not at 60 hertz, it is breaking every single emulator that I run through it. All of the emulators are basically tuned for a 60 hertz display. And so when you run Game Boy Advance at 53 hertz, the audio is broken, the game is broken, and everything just looks awful. It is not fun to play. And that is across the board. PlayStation 2, GameCube, everything. You probably would be fine if you played a PAL version, I guess, but I didn't try that because it just didn't make sense to. Is this something they can fix over the air? I don't know. It all depends on what they can do with the panel and how much they can fix it. If the panel can't do 60, then it just can't do 60 and you're in trouble. So we're going to have to wait to see what that looks like. But as of right now, literally games are unplayable. You cannot play games on this thing because it is just broken by the screen refresh rate. And if you're curious what that sounds like, here is Fire Red's opening, and you can hear it. Just everything is wrong with it. And there's a big problem. So we're going to have to wait for that to be fixed. Battery-wise, something is going on here as well, and this is just one after the other. The battery, I put this to sleep on my desk yesterday. 24 hours later, I've lost somehow 50% while it was in sleep. I don't know why. I have no idea what's going on. And if I turn it on right now and I look at my battery, I'm at 42%. I picked it up to start this at like 20 minutes ago and it was at 48% or something. So I've lost 6% in 20 or so minutes. I don't know what's going on with this thing. The battery is just dying constantly. There's a 7,400 milliamp hour battery in here. You should be able to get so much out of it. So something else is hurting it. Maybe the fan, maybe something. I don't know. Normally, at this point, I would probably do a game showcase and show you games and how they run and all of that, but I can't tell you what it can do or what it can't do because it just doesn't work yet. The device isn't ready, and that's it for my video. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.